Okay, welcome everybody to the intro to SkyGlass. This is going to be kind of a short version. The first few recordings of the Zooms were about 2.5 hours. I'm going to try and keep it below 2 if we can. That's probably going to be tough, but we're going to go over the features that are most often used within SkyGlass from an introductory perspective. Always feel free to ask questions. I would love if the questions is really where we get, obviously you'll get the most bang for the buck from this class, but I also get a lot of, guidance from how to improve the software and how to make it better and all that kind of thing from interacting with users and customers. So feel free to ask questions. The chat is a great place to drop questions if you want to just leave it there. I'm notoriously poor at actually following the chat. So Ren, could I ask you again to be the chat monitor? Will you be my hall monitor for today? Okay, good. I'm going to take that as a yes. I don't see your camera anymore, but that's all right. So you're welcome to drop questions in the chat, and someone will remind me. You're also welcome to just unmute yourself and remind, or interrupt me and just ask your question anytime throughout today. And I would be most grateful if you could put your video on, just so that I can kind of get a visual cue, if things are tracking, or you can raise your hand and I can get that kind of response. That's really helpful for me. You can also use the gestures, the little thumbs up, thumbs down, raise your hand kind of thing. That's not as useful, but it still gives me an indication of what's happening for you. So anyway, so let's cover the topics for today. Actually, before I do that, quick show of hands, how long you've been using SkyGlass. So if you're within, like, this is your first week, give me an indication. Brand new people, never use it. Oh, awesome. Okay, and who's that's okay. Job, excellent. All right, so we got a couple of brand new users and folks that have been sort of in the last couple of months. A little bit of it, okay. A little bit.
Well, I just sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm not very good with the emojis. Not here. I can't find anything. I haven't used Zoom in a long time. Yeah, I actually only joined a week ago. So yeah, pretty
awesome.
new.
So you're a new user too. Excellent, excellent.
Yep.
And then of course, I know we've got some old timers here. Anybody more than 6 months? Ren, are you gonna raise your hand? Thomas, good, excellent. Okay, good stuff. 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Oh, that's great. Beta on iOS. Okay, good. That's a good reminder. I'll cover a little bit of the iOS and mobile stuff when we get into that too. Okay, good. Let me make a note of that. iOS. Excellent. Okay, so let's cover the topics for today. Again, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter form. I'm not going to go over the onboarding process. We're not going to do watch lists in detail. We're not going to do the advanced functions of time travel, flight history, or the database, and we're not going to talk about the preferences panel. Everything except for the preferences panel has already been covered in a deep dive. Another Zoom live training session, and all those are up on YouTube and also in the tutorial section on my website. So feel free to check those out. What we will be covering today is basics of the user interface all over the place, every piece of it. How to obviously rotate the camera, move the camera around, how to move the map. We're going to talk about how to load traffic in mill mode and in standard mode. Talk about how to switch those modes and do that most responsibly, and the limitations are in standard mode. That's a really important part. How to change your home location, which applies in standard mode. We will talk about traces. We will talk about the type list panel and the watch list panel in a quick overview, just kind of get you started. But again, if you really want to get the most out of the watch list panel, definitely do the deep dive, because there is a ton of stuff with that. Really built that one out a lot. And last, how to tune your interface for best results. Sort of some cul-de-sacs you don't want to get yourself into, how to get yourself out when things are bad, or got something stuck. So before I move any further along, let me close the agenda, and let's do a mouse and a mic check. First, mic check. Everybody can hear me okay? No problem with that? Good. All right, and the mouse, can you see my pointer okay on the screen moving around? All right, I'm getting some nods. Okay, good. So no problem there. It's not too small. All right, perfect. Okay, so let me clean up my interface. And so the first thing after, so again, I'm not going to cover the onboarding process. You should have already downloaded, installed the software, created a username, got that activated, and now you're online with SkyGlass. If you have any trouble with those things, feel free to reach out to me using the Need Help button on the website. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of every web page, or you can use the support form from the drop-down menu and just reach out to me directly. And I'm online most days and will respond hopefully within a few minutes, if not a few hours. All right. So first thing, when you first launch SkyGlass, the first thing you want to do is get the user interface to a point where you can see it easily. There's so many different variations of screens and sizes and all that kind of stuff. So on the bottom right-hand corner, the main button stack is what we call this. At the top of that stack, there are two little chevrons up and down, and when you hover over that, it turns green. Click on that and drag upwards, and you'll see that not only scales the main button stack, but it also will scale all the different parts of the user interface in all four corners. Okay, so I'm going to make this sort of absurdly large for today, just so everybody can see it. But you can, obviously tune that as you like. Hold on one moment. Other thing I really like about you guys asking questions is I can take a little break and wet my throat. All right, so the bottom right-hand corner, the main button stack is this first big column. You'll notice that you can collapse the auxiliary stuff, the stuff that builds out to the left of that with this button on the very bottom. Clicking on that sort of hides the user interface. It's nice if you want to take a screenshot or keep it sort of minimized and tight UI in that perspective, but all the extended functionality is on the auxiliary button stack, which is here. And then depending on your settings, you'll get other things that will populate out to the left. So by default, when you first start SkyGlass, you're going to be in military mode, which is in the main button stack. This shield icon is green, and that means you're in mil mode. And then when you're in mil mode, it's going to default automatically to auto refresh. So it's automatically going to periodically update all the aircraft positions. And when that is on, so let me toggle it off and then toggle it back on, you'll see we've got a little blue auxiliary pop-out panel, which has a slider on it that gives you the refresh, periodicity, how often it's going to auto refresh. So first note on how to keep SkyGlass sort of tuned effectively, depending on what you're doing and what you have loaded, you may want to adjust that auto refresh to what your computer can keep up with, essentially, and what makes sense for you. If you're under kind of a long, a wide view, anything 30 seconds to a minute is practical in that sense. But if you're like looking at an airport, you'll probably want to tune that up to be faster, even up to 1 second. But if you have other, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, if you have traces on or other things that can really hog memory and hog processing and take up to a while to process, you don't want to get SkyGlass into a situation where it takes longer to do its job of loading and rendering than your auto refresh has given it, right, in the in-betweens. So you'll just, if one thing, if SkyGlass seems to be a little wonky or things don't seem to be keeping up, just extend that auto refresh out a little bit longer so that there's a little bit of a break, and SkyGlass can do all that it needs to do based on what you've told it to do. Okay, did that make sense? Auto refresh. Okay, great. So sort of moving further down, we'll talk more about traces in a little bit. The camera icon just takes a screen grab. First time you take a screen grab, it will ask you for a place to save your screen grabs, and then it will remember that setting, and then we'll just put them all there when any subsequent screen grab. The preference panel is activated with this big gear icon in the main button stack, and the pop-up help for all the new users. This is also on by default, and a really I think a good function. Basically, anytime you hover over anything that's got a button or, has some instruction, there'll be a little pop-up on top of the auxiliary button stack, and the main button stack in this instance says stop all loading actions. So it just gives you a very brief explanation of what that button does, so you can kind of learn all the functionality in a brief way. So if you probably want to keep that on. I'm going to turn that off for the class just so it doesn't distract me and be take up the screen space. Okay, and so let me cover one piece of the preferences panel, which is important. So I'm going to open that up now, and that is on the left-hand side in the center. We've got the save preference options. So if you get SkyGlass kind of in a hole and you just want to kind of reset it and kind of get you back to where you were at the very beginning, that is this full reset button. And basically what this does is it trashes all the preferences, all the saved settings, and just rebuilds that file into the pristine state. So basically just like you reinstalled SkyGlass. If you delete and reinstall, that actually doesn't affect the preferences. They're going to be remembered. So if you want to just kind of do a clean sweep of the interface and reset everything, that's what you do. Click this big full reset button or the big flame, and that will log you out of SkyGlass and rebuild the preferences file back to your original state. All right, so moving forward. So let's talk about camera basics. The first thing I want to talk about is just clicking and dragging on the interface. That's going to move or translate the camera. I kind of think about this in a little bit of a filming perspective, in that you have a camera that's viewing the scene here that we've got all of our traffic, and the camera has a fixed point in the center which it rotates around. Okay, so if you right click and drag, you'll notice that the camera does a rotation. You'll also notice if I let me get my camera down on the surface. There we go, and let me zoom in. So so I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So left click translates the camera, right click does a rotate. The scroll wheel on your mouse will move the camera in and out from that center point of rotation, okay, which is marked on your screen with a little purple target. Okay, and that's always going to be in the center of the screen, but it's going to get smaller as you zoom out. Okay, the important thing to note here, though, is that, again, this is the center of rotation. So as you translate that, your camera, that center of rotation moves, but you're always going to rotate about that center. If you move in, you'll notice that that rotation becomes much tighter, right? But if you zoom out, then you kind of can, move around the scene, with a larger sort of a pan. It's kind of like a big dolly rig, if you're familiar with camera rigs. Anyway, so if you have a non-mouse setup, something like a trackpad on your on your Apple, Mac Pro or something like that, or MacBook Pro, there are keyboard shortcuts for the right click. So if you control and left click, which would be the click and drag on your tab on your trackpad, the control will mimic the right click rotation, and then option. If you hold down the option key and drag up and down, that's going to change the elevation of your point of rotation of your camera, or your camera home position. All right. You also can use the keyboard. The arrow keys, up, down, left, right, will do rotation. And then for all of us old Doom gamers, or keyboard warriors, the W, A, S, and D key are the translate on your keyboard. So if you hold down the W, that'll move you forward. S moves you backwards, A and D move you left and right, and then the Q and the E, which sort of flank that W, that will move you up and down, elevate and bring your camera down. Okay, so there are keyboard shortcuts depending on what you're doing, and if you get really fancy with it, you can do some keyboard combinations and get some cool camera moves. Mike, you might be interested in that. Anyway, kind of fun for screen recording if you're doing a screen recording. Okay. Any questions before I move on from the camera movements? Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away if anything. No? Okay, good. Good. All right.
I'm using a laptop, so I use the trackpad. I think I do have a little, yeah, I use the arrow keys as well.
Okay, so yeah, you're going to want to use that control key. That's going to be your rotation. That's your master rotation for you. Also, while we're here, let me talk about the iOS. So everything except for rotation it's kind of what you would expect for a touch interface. One tap drag will translate the camera around. Two finger movements, a pinch and zoom is going to be your scroll. If you do 3 fingers, tap and up and down, that's going to do the elevation. The sort of hidden feature, the rotation, if you it's sort of 2 steps. You have to collapse the user interface using that minimize button on the bottom of the main button stack, and then do a single finger tap anywhere in this sort of bottom right hand quadrant, and that's going to activate an on-screen joystick and kind of give you a little joystick movement of rotation. So that's how you do rotation on mobile devices, iPad, Android phones, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, perfect. You're totally blurred out, Ren, but thank you. It's the background is doing a blend, but thank you. That's good. There is a video on YouTube that I talk about this specifically. It's changes in the user interface. So anyway, you can reference that. But again, minimize the user interface and then taps anywhere in this bottom right hand quadrant, and that's going to be an on-screen pop-up of your joystick. And then once you release the tap, it'll go away. All right. So let me go through the interface, kind of go around the circle here. So the main interface buttons and all that kind of stuff is in the bottom right-hand corner. Bottom left-hand corner, if you click on the SkyGlass word itself, that will activate this little yellow, it's sort of it started out as a debug window when I was coding, and then I left it for the beta users and everybody kind of liked it. So I kind of just left it in there as an Easter egg for people. Basically, anytime that you're doing anything within SkyGlass, it's going to tell you sort of the last thing that happened and kind of give you an indicator of what's happening in that moment. It'll move quickly, through things, but it may be useful for you. Kind of could be interesting. Also gives you some data counts on how things, took to load, how long it took, and things like that. And if you don't want that, you can just click on the SkyGlass word itself, and that'll hide that. You'll also notice this little special beta testing window that popped up. That's just an internal thing that you're not going to see that on yours, but I can't disable it on mine. It's tied to your login or your username. So anyway, I'll turn that off for now. These are also some badges, a system that will be rolling out in more detail later. If you're a feeder, if you're part of the Monkey Nation, if you're a subscriber, if you're a bug tester, SkyRider, any of those kind of group ones, those will be part of more future releases, but that's what those little icons are for. We've got some other attribution here for ADSB Exchange and for Mapbox, the map system. The top left-hand corner will give you the current time in UTC, Universal Time Code, sort of Greenwich Mean Time. We'll also give you your current home location if you have chosen a home location. And then a quick, sort of very, very basic weather, current weather at that home location. All right. So, and that will update, every minute, the weather will. And then if you change your home location, that will also update and give you a different readout of your the location that you have picked here. I just happen to have double clicked on the somewhere out in Texas, and that's why that Jewel State is there, or Jewel Court. Okay, top right hand corner. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Actually, I'm just going to drag this down because often my keyboard or my camera will show over this part. This line at the top shows the sort of the counts of the what you have loaded on the screen at the moment. We're in military mode, and so the showing is the actually how many aircraft have been rendered. The last load is how many aircraft were actually in the return that I asked from ADSB Exchange. And then we've got a breakout of mill and masked. This negative in the 3, this, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but that shows how many were scrubbed in the last cycle, meaning they weren't updated in the last few auto refresh cycles. They're determined as kind of a stale return. They're going to be wiped off screen. And then this on-screen piece, that's probably what most of you are interested in. If I zoom in to a certain area, it's going to update very quickly of just how many aircraft are on screen, not versus how many are loaded or versus, how many are actually rendered in the scene. When you're in mill mode, all the traffic worldwide are returned, and so you're going to see everything is going to be rendered on the map depending on the zoom setting, etc. But if you want to sort of get a count of hey, what's over with continental United States, just move your camera so you're only seeing that, and then you'll get an on-screen count which is accurate. Monkey likes to do this when he's doing his sit reps. He'll pull out certain things and then do an on-screen count. Okay, and so Kitty, to your point here, this top right-hand corner icon, that will activate or deactivate the heads-up display, which is if you then hover over any aircraft, you'll get the aircraft detail over the icon itself, and then you'll also get this representation on the top right-hand corner. So let me go into that with a little bit more detail. So let me set the screen up here. Let me get an aircraft up and easy to see. There we go. All right. So as far as and let me turn off auto refresh so we can keep it nice and still. Okay. So as far as the aircraft icon and what all that means, there's several different aspects. First, the bottom-most piece of this sort of representation of the aircraft is a little chevron, and that chevron is going to be pointed in the area or in the in the direction that the aircraft is flying, and that is actually the point in space in this simulation of where that aircraft is in space. That will always be on screen, the aircraft position in a little chevron. The chevron will be one of 3 colors. It will be either green, red, or blue. Green means it's climbing, red means it's descending, and blue, the sort of cyan, pale blue, that means that it is a level flight. It has not changed. It's not going up or down more than 50 feet per minute. Okay. So the first element, again, is this the chevron. Again, that is the actual aircraft position in space. This octagon with the aircraft profile, you can think of as a compass rose. All right. It's going to position the icon profile of the aircraft based on its heading as if this were the cardinal direction. So this one obviously is heading sort of easterly, and if we now talk about the pop-up area here, the aircraft type that's being reported from the transponder. Again, all this is based off of the transponder in an aircraft sending out a signal which gives its position and the telemetry and other aircraft information, the type, the call sign, its hex code, obviously the unique identifier for the transponder and all that stuff. So this is, if you're a fan of Monkey and you're watching, there'll be a lot of aircraft that don't have, for one reason or another, whether it's intentional or just because there's an issue with the transponder or whatever, there'll be a lot of transponders that don't show a type code, like what type of aircraft that is. So you'll get a little NA here. Sometimes you won't get a call sign either. So sometimes these will be, not reported, but again, that's, the aircraft transponder is driving the entire system, picked up by the feeders, then fed back into the ADSB Exchange system, and then I get that return and render it in SkyGlass. So aircraft type is the top left, the call sign, in this case, Grizzly 39 in the top right. Below the call sign will be the aircraft registration, often referred to as the tail number. It's what's painted on the aircraft in black letters. That for military, it's going to be just kind of a bunch of numbers. For commercial aircraft or private aircraft, it starts with an N in North America. That's what they call it, an N number. Sometimes people think of it as the end number, but it's actually N like Nancy. Anyway, and then the hex code is decoded for the country. Okay, the hex code is the one in magenta on the right, and sort of in the middle. Again, the hex code is referred to, you'll hear that a lot when you talk about feeders or in flight tracking. That is the unique identifier for the transponder itself. Okay, it's one of the few things that won't ever change from flight to flight to flight. Okay, the call sign, especially for military, changes every flight, can change mid-flight, depending on if their mission profile changes, they'll change a call sign. The registration is that's also kind of a lookup. It's given to me by ADSB Exchange, but that's not actually sent out with the transponder feed, from what I remember. So that's sort of a lookup. Anyway, and then this country code is just a decode of the hex code to give you an indication of where, what country that hex code and tail number is registered in. Okay. And then this bottom row, in this midsection here, the left-hand side in green, 7612, that is what is the current squawk code. The air traffic control assigns every aircraft that's under air traffic control a unique, it's actually not unique, it's unique in that sort of area of space. You won't have a hex code in the same area, like over the same state or something that are the same, same transponder code, but you may see the same transponder code, across the planet in different times. So anyway, this is assigned by ATC, air traffic control, given to the aircraft. That's what they actually dial in on their squawk code that tunes their transponder to put out this number, so it's easier for them to track. I mention this because if an aircraft declares an emergency, then there are specific hex codes, squawk codes that they will change then to show that they are in an emergency state. And those are the 7700s. 7700 is general emergency. 7600, I think, is the no radio, NORDO, and then 7500 is hijacked aircraft. Those are the three that are sort of the standard. The air traffic control may also just flag it as an emergency, and there's a flag that I get in the data that's returned, and that's how we will show the emergency aircraft if you have that setting on, which I'll talk about later. Okay, and then the bottom part here is the telemetry of the aircraft, what the current altitude is, the change in altitude per minute. This one's 128 feet going up in a positive. If it's negative, it'll be if it's descending, it'll be a negative number. The speed in knots, in this case, 447.7 knots. And then the last is the current heading. Excuse me. So all this data is basically mirrored in the top right-hand corner if you have the HUD activated. And again, to turn that HUD on and off, you can just click on this top furthermost right-hand corner icon and then hover over an aircraft again. There's a little bit more information off to the left. Let's see if we can find one that actually has, there's one. There we go. So this E3, you can see there is, let me hover over it again. There we go. You can see there's a little thumbnail with its picture. This is an actual picture of the aircraft that someone took and then uploaded to the plane spotter database. And then we can integrate that into, download it and bring it into SkyGlass. If you click on the image itself, you'll get a little bit larger picture of it, more detail. And then if you click on the little information icon in the bottom right-hand corner of that, that'll pop you out to the plane spotter web page, and you can look at more detail and look at other pictures of that aircraft. Basically, this is showing the last photograph that was taken of this aircraft. It's kind of cool. Not all aircraft will have plane spotter images, but often you do. But just to remember that this is not like a representation of that type of aircraft. That's the actual aircraft. Somebody that took a picture of it on the ramp somewhere or in flight and then uploaded it to their system. All right. And then to the left, we just got a larger representation of the aircraft profile. And then we've got some extra buttons here. I'm not going to talk about the hourglass. That is the flight history reporting that you can get for just this aircraft. This top left-hand corner, the banner is the watch list representation. It's a button. If you click on it, it will add this aircraft to your watch list and then show in green. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then these other three, the target, the transmission tower, and the database, those will activate these added panels below the HUD, which you see here. So let me turn them off so they'll all go away. The target icon does two things. It shows you, it does a quick lookup, which to be honest is not super accurate. The type, it does a lookup of the type that's reported and tries to identify what the actual like manufacturer model number of that is. But again, there's so many variations of different types that one's not as accurate as I'd like to be. But it does give you the manufacturer as well. So in this case, it's such a Cessna Citation Jet Encore. And then in this next panel, it shows the actual latitude and longitude that was reported. So the lat long, and then does a lookup of that and gives a vector and direction to the nearest metropolitan area. So kind of the closest city, and then it shows, in this case, 29 miles south of Kalispell, Montana, and then the local time of that aircraft of that position. So useful if you took a screenshot, then you'd have the actual detail of that aircraft position. If you click on the tower, let me move this back up. If you click on the tower, then you get this extra panel here, sort of that was sandwiched in the middle. And when you're in military mode, you're not going to get much detail here. For some reason, that isn't shared. When you're in standard mode, you may get more information. What type of, what mode the transponder is in, whether it's an ADS-B mode or mode S. You'll also get some, category information, sort of a higher level view, be it a single engine land or multi-engine land, rotorcraft, balloon, lighter than aircraft, something like that. That's the ICAO CAT, their category. You may also get information about like the aircraft itself. Again, this is just if it's put out by the transponder, then I've created a place where you can see that. So the nav mode could be if it has what's the thing I'm thinking of? TCAS, collision avoidance. If it's an autopilot mode, things like that, that may be represented in this nav mode. The RAD-C, that is an important one to track if you're, into the detail here. The RAD-C means radius of containment, and that is a number in meters showing the position confidence of that transponder signal. And that usually it's within like 15 to 75 meters. A couple hundred feet, but you're not going to, it's, because of the velocity and the change of variation and the different, transponders and all that, or the different feeders that it's picked up from, that'll give you a rough indication of its, position confidence. If it's in mode S, that becomes a very large number, and it could be, several miles variation of where that position, aircraft actually is versus what it's being reported as in the system. Okay, so that's the RAD-C. And then if you have the database activated, then you'll get a lookup of the owner operator, and the other detail that's in the database. We're not going to cover that today. All right, so let me turn those off. And just to cover, finish up here, this bottom one, this little horseshoe magnet, that will turn on flight follow me mode, which basically keeps that aircraft in center of the screen. The camera will zoom back to it if you move off of that aircraft, and every time you refresh, it's going to rehome the camera, so it kind of keeps that aircraft in view all the time. That's in follow me mode. All right, let me pause here for questions if anybody has any.
I do.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
I wanted to find out, how Monkey works. He has, you see all the lines. When you click on one plane, it'll show the path that it's been on.
Mhm.
How can you follow several at the same time?
Okay, so we'll get into that when we talk about traces, probably the next segment, but I'll cover that for sure. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to do traces, so I'll show you that. Okay, let me make a note here. Traces. Okay, 4-key mouse. Okay, good. All right. So let me talk about a few more pieces of the interface before we get into traces, because traces will be a long conversation. So in the auxiliary button stack, which is this main pop out next to the main button stack, let me cover it from bottom to top. So the bottommost section, this little pop out here, is the map zoom. And basically it's going to zoom the map, the ground map up to different levels. It's almost at its most wide view right now. That's kind of where I keep it at. If you go about into more of a city or region sort of a space, and I'm out over nowhere, so let me get a good home. Let me just pop that onto Tucson, let that marinate. Okay, and I'm also going to do this sort of out of order. If you click on the folded map icon, that will bring up a little sub panel which gives you options for different map styles. So I'm going to just get this back into satellite mode, which is the default style. Most of you are probably seeing it in. And that's
Playing from Beeling 02.
Oops. Sorry about that. Mute that guy. Okay. So satellite view, as I said, about mid zone of the map zoom slider will give you kind of a city or, regional sort of a look. If you go all the way in, then you can get to a city block. The zoom is actually pretty tight on this. You can go very, very far in. You'll notice also that I was clicking in the slider. I didn't click and drag the slider. That's probably a much easier way for you to use the slider. It's nice to have a quick, have a spectrum to just click on, but if you try and drag the slider, you're going to have a poor user experience. These map tiles in this map system, which is a plugin for Mapbox, is not really good with this sort of, dynamic viewing. So I like to sort of just, click somewhere where I kind of know where, in a basic level. And then you can also use the plus and minus to just kind of bump that up, the map zoom up or down a level. So let me just bump up again, and you can see, even on my, pretty fast machine, I've got a good internet connection. It takes a while for all these map tiles to load up. But as I said, full deflection to the right will give you basically a city block. And then if you click way out here, you can get more of a, continental sort of a view there. So the thing to remember is, so let me dial in, put in like Boca Raton, my neck of the woods, and I'll zoom the map in. As you change the map zoom level, you may want to then adjust two things. First is this, in the group of vertical sliders, this one on the left, this one on the right. This is what's called the height adjustment slider. This changes the relative height of all the aircraft that have been rendered on screen. So it kind of stretches and squishes all the different aircraft position to kind of give you that height variation. Point is, as you zoom the map in, you'll want to keep bringing that down so that you're not losing aircraft off the top of your screen. Okay. If you take that slider and bring it all the way down, that is actual altitude with no, stretching or squishing. Okay. It's actual altitude. The other thing you'll want to change is this second slider, which is basically, it's not changing the position of any aircraft. It's just giving making the aircraft group the chevron and the icon and all the pop-ups, it's scaling all of those. Okay, so you just want to tune that to your, monitor and how good your eyesight is and all that kind of stuff. Okay. You will notice though, let me zoom back out with the map zoom. And you'll notice my height adjustment slider is all the way down. So all the aircraft are at their actual position. And, hey, might as well have a flat map, right? Really hard to see the different flight levels, even though some are going to be on the ground and some are going to be at 50,000 feet. So that's why I created this height adjustment slider. If you bring this all the way up, then you can very quickly and easily show, the different various flight levels if you kick your camera off to the side and you've got a nice little 3D view. Okay, so I know I bounced around a little bit there, covered a lot, really important stuff. Key takeaways are when you change your map zoom level, you'll want to then adjust the size of the aircraft for your viewing pleasure and also the height adjustment slider so that you basically can see everything that you want to see and you're not losing the top end stuff. All right. And then if you're at an sort of airport view, at the top end of this map zoom, you'll just want to keep that low because then the actual aircraft makes more sense. Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Is that the same for a helicopter?
Same for all aircraft.
Okay.
Yeah. There is no distinction of type of aircraft or any kind of filtering when you're doing that height adjustment slider. It scales everything. The only thing I was thinking
is other information. Other information, the call signs and all that.
Basically, this is any aircraft that has a transponder that's reporting. I'm basically giving to you what was given to me in that sense of what's in the system. So okay. That's depending on So it's really again, it's transponder driven. It's not there's very few lookups or things like matching that I'm doing apart from very basic lookups of the the aircraft profile and stuff like that. Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. You bet. All right. So again, height adjustment slider, really fun and a cool way to just quickly see the different flight levels and all that the aircraft. One feature I am working on, love to get your guys' opinion about this. I've had several people say, hey, I'd love to be able to filter by altitude, like put in, I only show me 50,000 feet and above or, below 10,000, something like that. That useful? Thumbs up, thumbs down, maybe not so interested. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay. Yeah. General consensus is that would be kind of a cool feature. It's always a balance of trying to keep it, simple in a kind of a very complex world. And I will say that, SkyGlass has gotten pretty complicated. There's definitely a learning curve. Okay. So in the auxiliary button stack here, as we were working up the different levels, we talked about this middle icon in this next group up, which is the map style pop out. So I'm going to turn that off. This next one governs the sliders themselves. If you want to, turn them off. I like to keep them on screen because I use them so often. There are a couple of other hidden ones that are not as often, not used as often. If you click on this little button at the top, you'll see two more that pop out. This first one is an adjustment for your mouse sensitivity. Again, there's quite a variation of different mouse styles, and you can change the speed of your mouse on your computer itself, but this will actually, you can tune that as well, make it slower or much more responsive. I kind of like to keep mine down on the lower section, but that's the first one, is the mouse sensitivity. And then the second one, probably you're not going to use very often, but everything in SkyGlass and, transponders most often report their altitude in barometric pressure. All pilots, that's kind of what they need to think about in baro. It's not, it's very different from the actual altitude above ground. If you don't know much about barometric pressure altitude, you can have a barometric pressure altitude, which is actually below the surface of the field, let's say. It changes based on the density and the temperature of the air. Pilots will give you a long, nice explanation about that. But baro is basically what all transponders report in. when you're in flying under aircraft air traffic control and you're above 18,000 feet, it might be an interesting data point. All transponders then are changed to sort of basic, and so that they're sort of easier to manage. They're all flying at the same flight levels. But anyway, so barometric pressure is what the system is reporting at. You will notice at times, though, because of this sort of weird, anomaly of actual altitude above ground and what's being reported by the aircraft, sometimes if you're zoomed in on an airport, let's say like in Denver, something very high, the aircraft may be going under the ground. So I created this little barometric adjuster so that you can basically kind of nudge everybody up or down and to kind of adjust for barometric pressure variations to kind of keep things looking at a more normal position, so things are actually landing on the aircraft, tarmac, not below the surface. If you see the traces actually going below, that means that the barometric pressure being reported is below surface, and so that's why you're getting that anomaly. Anyway, so I'd stay away from this unless you are zoomed in on an airport pretty tightly and need to do this. And if you need to reset it, this is a little button at the bottom. Click on it again, it'll reset it to 0. All right, but most often you'll want to keep this collapsed because these are the two that you're going to use most often, the scalar and the height adjustment slider. Okay, and again, these are in the vertical button or vertical slider icon here. Any questions before I move on?
You might mention that the mouse sensitivity also impacts the keyboard controls.
Good point. Yes, it's sort of a global camera sensitivity adjustment.
Yeah.
All right, good point. Excellent. Okay, so in this, the last button in this grouping here is this location target. If I turn that off and turn it back on again, you'll see we've got this little pop-out panel here. This is the location input to change your home location. When you're in military mode, as I said before, all the aircraft are loaded globally, okay? So there's really not a use for the home location because you're getting all the aircraft across the planet, and regardless of where your map is, even if you bounce over, actually let me get my mouse up a little bit more. If you bounce over here to the Europe, doesn't matter. Home location has no impact on the rendering of the aircraft. When you're in standard mode, that's a completely different animal. So let me get back over to so let me put it this way. The home location can be useful when you're in mil mode for just moving the camera to a specific location. If you have like an airport that you want to look at, you can do that directly. Open up the location input panel, type in whatever you want. You can put in a city name, a state name, country name, airport code. If you're using an airport code, sometimes it will take the 3-letter identifier. Often you'll need to put that for fields in the United States. There's a K identifier that you want to put it ahead of that. So it all depends on this is a sort of geocoding reverse lookup by Google. It's sort of a natural language. Sometimes it's going to understand what an airport code is. Sometimes it won't. Anyway, if you put in the airport code, it doesn't pop. Just add a K in front of it if it's over the United States or North America, and it will probably get you there. You can even put in a zip code. You can put in a street address. This is, as I said, natural language sort of interpreter. It does a reverse geocode lookup and then pops you to that location. So again, it's useful to move your camera around when you're in mil mode, but it won't have really any other effect. You will notice that there is also this other slider, which shows this sort of search distance radius. That is only going to impact what's happening if you are in standard mode. So let's do that now. I'm going to switch from mil mode into standard mode by clicking on the shield icon. And you'll notice a few things happen. First, it's going to clear all the returns. And if you had this location picker disabled, it's going to bring that up. And then you've got this little search radius box that's painted on the screen. So the point here now is you need to tune SkyGlass so that you get a meaningful return in that sense. So let's pick a location. Let's see, Mike was in KFRG. I think that was right. All right. And so I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to change my map zoom up a little bit more. I'll wait for those tiles to render. All right. I'm going to pick like 100 miles. And let's see. Yeah, this is over New York, New Jersey area. So we're going to have a lot of traffic. I'm going to bring my height adjustment slider down in anticipation for the aircraft numbers here. And I'm going to click on the top right-hand button in the main button stack, which is a load button. And we'll see all these aircraft start to render in. Okay, so as this finishes, okay, great. So let's talk about types of aircraft. Now you'll notice, now that we're not in mill mode, we've got different colored icons for the different types of traffic. And basically there are 3 different colors. We've got, let me zoom in one more time on the map, get a little bit more separation. All right, so basically there are 3 classes of aircraft. There are military, anything that has been flagged as a military in the back-end system. There are masked aircraft, and then there are anything that doesn't fall into those 2 categories, which are then a standard aircraft. So a standard aircraft are going to be anything that is a commercial flight. Most private aircraft, the little Cessnas out, doing their flight training, personal aircraft, those are going to be standard. A masked aircraft is something a little special. Most most flight tracking apps get their data, again, depending on the platform, from the FAA. And the FAA has 2 different programs which are kind of like pay to play to be removed from the public view. Okay, and so it's not that they don't have to have their transponder on or something like that. They're still part of the air traffic control system because they have to be if they're monitored, or they require separation from ATC. But if they don't want to be part of the public facing feeds that go out from the FAA, they can subscribe into what's called the PIA or the LADD, these 2 different programs that will basically filter them out before they're given out to the public for these other flight trackers. ADSB Exchange doesn't have any arrangements with or get any of the data from the FAA, so they're not contractually obligated to filter their data, and that's why we can kind of see who's a masked aircraft and who isn't. So in SkyGlass, we give them a special icon and a color. Anything that's in magenta, the sort of purplish color, they are masked aircraft. And then the military, as you're familiar with, are the sort of yellow-orange with the orange border around their background. Okay, so you'll also notice when you stepped into standard mode, out of military mode, not only did you get this location chooser, but you also got this other pop-up here, which are these 3 different classifications: normies, standard aircraft, military aircraft, and the masked aircraft. Now, this last one, emergency, any aircraft, regardless of what type, what classification they are, they can be moved into an emergency state. They can declare an emergency. And then so we built into SkyGlass the ability to filter for just the emergency aircraft types. And so if an aircraft becomes, declares an emergency and you happen to get them in a return, their aircraft profile color will remain the same, but the background will flash yellow and to call a little bit more attention to it. There'll also be a little pop-up window here For those of us that were on as we were, getting to know each other very beginning, there was a military aircraft that declared an emergency, and that was showing in this little listing on the left here, a little pop-up panel. Okay, so very important. This is to keep SkyGlass responsive and working well, is to keep this search distance radius box to a point where you're only getting a good number of returns depending on your settings. Okay, so let me say that again. So you'll tune your search distance radius based on the types of aircraft that you're getting back in the returns. If you're looking at an airport and you want to see all different types of aircraft, regardless of what their, what classification they are, and meaning the normies and the military and the mast are all on, you're going to get everything. You want to keep this low. Okay. If you turn the normies off, you'll see my screen just reduced by 70% for the number of traffic. Okay, I say all of this because most computers are going to start to get slow after about 500-600, depending on your computer hardware, at most about 1,000. Once you start trying to render more than 600-700 aircraft, SkyGlass will become incredibly slow. So meaning you really there's very, 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 very few hardware platforms that can do all aircraft over the United States all the time, okay, including the normies. It's very easy to show, let's see here, several hundred miles. Let me zoom out, get over the States a little bit more, rehome. You can do several hundred miles if you're only looking at military or masked. All right, so let me do that. So we're somewhere over out of Kentucky, and I've got it out to about 1,000 miles. And I'm going to load traffic. And you'll see, and you can see how quickly it starts to render in. And then once it gets up to about 500, it starts to slow down, but it will finish. But again, if you've got an older machine, something that doesn't have a good graphics processor, this may be too much for the computer to handle. Okay, so you'll want to do a couple of things. You can either reduce the search radius, turn off one of the classifications of aircraft, depending on what you're wanting, or just tune these things based on how responsive it's getting. So if SkyGlass is getting very slow, then you'll know that you're asking a little bit too much for the system. Incidentally, there's an expectation when you go onto like even the ADSB Exchange website, and you're like, oh, I can see all the aircraft over the States, right? Well, these icons are huge. And so they're, clearly you're not going to have the aircraft is not the size of a city and something like that. It actually does a fair amount of filtering. You're not actually seeing everything, right? So SkyGlass actually tries to put all the different aircraft and their position and a graphical representation in a 3D space. It can become pretty memory intensive, especially from a graphics processor perspective. So just want to kind of set your expectations. If you want to look at normal aircraft, you definitely want to keep the search radius down low. Okay, so let's do a little bit of tuning in that regard. So for giggles here, I'm going to put in a new, let's go to DCA. That's Reagan National. And I'm going to reduce the search engine, the search distance radius down 100 miles. I'm going to turn, before I turn on the normies, I'm going to go ahead and burn. This is this flame icon in this auxiliary button stack. Basically, that's going to clear the screen, clear all the traffic, gives you a little visual indicator when it's finished working. And then I'm going to reload traffic. Now I'm going to turn on the normal aircraft and then reduce my height adjustment slider to where I can see everybody that's sort of on screen here. So again, depending on your profile or what you're wanting to do with SkyGlass, if you're wanting to look at a specific area, you'll want to home, put in to the input panel what your home location is. So let's do that again, KFRG. It's going to pop us over there. And then If you reload the traffic, you'll see that it's now loading in this second area. So we didn't scrub. So we still have, now we've got two different sort of locations. You can see even that's going to start to slow SkyGlass down a little bit because of the number of returns. If that happens for you, you can do a couple of different things. You can click on the stop button, and that's going to basically arrest any refresh or any sort of automated cycle that's happening, anything that's starting to still load. You can just kind of stop it and then burn, which will clear the screen, and then load traffic again by clicking on the top button. And you can see SkyGlass is definitely way more responsive now. And then you can tune your UI so that you can see everybody that you want. Now, the first load always takes the longest. To reload or refresh will become very, very quick. So best to not turn it on to auto refresh mode until everything's loaded, and then you can kick off refresh, auto refresh, like I have now. And you can see here, I can make this even every 5 seconds, even 1 second. And it will update very quickly. Okay. So one thing I didn't cover in this top right-hand corner, this the main load button, we've got two wheels. The yellow, as you can see, is the countdown timer for the auto refresh cycle. So let me bump that back up, and you can see that'll start to tick down slower. The green inner one is a sort of a progress bar of the loading cycle. When you're reloading and everything's already been loaded at least once, it's doing an update, you won't even notice how quickly that turns around. But if I stop and clear and load again, you'll see that this green bar will actually wrap around, and you get a sort of quick visual indicator of the progress in the load cycle. There we go. Excuse me. Okay. So again, switching into into standard mode, you'll want to keep a couple things in mind. What are you trying to look at? If you're trying to look at all aircraft, including the standard, you'll want to keep that search radius low and homed into a specific location. If you're wanting to get just a look at the military aircraft over a specific area, you can turn off these other classifications like the normies and the masked, and now you have a regional view of just that aircraft class, the military in this example, and then you can go much wider for your search radius because the number of aircraft that you're trying to show on screen has been reduced. All right, does that make sense? Okay, looking good. All right, great. All right, let me go back and check my notes here, make sure I've covered everything. We do need to talk about the jumper, which I will. Okay, so the classifications here, this is kind of a way to filter and declutter, also in a sense. And that is, you can manually turn on and off that area by clicking on this little filter declutter button. Okay, the bottom part of this will show what is on screen for all aircraft all the time. The only one that is on by default is the aircraft profile icons. If I turn those off, now you can see it's only the aircraft chevrons that are rendered. Okay, click that back on. Now you've got the aircraft icons, and then these are the different elements of that. So if you want to just look at the types, you can turn on the types for all the aircraft. This part has the type and the transponder squawk code. You can also turn on the call signs or the telemetry or all three. And you can, mix and match, do whatever you want. So here's just the telemetry. And again, this is, depending on what you're trying to do and what your sort of knowledge level is, that kind of thing. I often like to keep the, when I'm in military mode or in this sort of hybrid mil mode, I like to keep on the types just because I can't I don't understand exactly what the profile is depending. So this is like a kind of quick, indicator. Oh, these BE-20s, these are little transports, C-17s, these are movers, K-35Rs, these are going to be your refuelers, things like that, versus trainers, helicopters. Okay. But if you want to look at the call signs, then you can kind of get that next level of if you're a military aircraft watcher, you'll know that, certain aircraft call signs have patterns, like this reach is going to be mover. They're moving, hauling either people or equipment. The K-35Rs sometimes will have oiler or some sort of a fueling kind of a reference. There's a lot of variations in that. Good, we got a PAT, priority air transport, so they're moving a VIP around. Also, depending on the branch, I think PAT, Ren, you can cross-check me on this. One of them's Air Force, one of them's Army versus SAM versus PAT. Anyway, PAT is like, I think, Air Force priority air transport, and if the Army's moving them, it's a SAM flight, special air mission. So anyway, that's somehow, you can decode these call signs. Was speaking with somebody who was in the Air Force, told me that there is, and I referenced like, oh, there's so many acronyms in the military. And he goes, yeah, somebody put out a reference manual and it's like 500 or 800 pages of just acronyms. So it's an insane amount. Anyway, I think somewhere online there is a, how to decode call signs, military call signs. I don't know how accurate it is. It wasn't accurate enough for me to want to include it into SkyGlass, I'll tell you that much. But anyway, call signs, telemetry, aircraft class. You can toggle the on-screen for all of them in this little panel there. And then if you want to have there's another little pop out at the bottom, you can look at aircraft owner operator, and that's this database icon here. Does a database lookup. In mil mode, there are no owner operators. It's all military. So there's actually nothing reported there. But okay, so I really want to drive home the message, because this is what, if you don't understand this key point about standard mode and military mode, when you're in standard mode, you need to limit the number of returns either based on the search radius or the class before you load your traffic. Otherwise, you're going to have a sort of a poor SkyGlass experience. That make sense? All right. Thomas, say hi to your cat for me. Cute little guy. Love cats. Okay, so moving up, we've got this next panel. So let me flip back into military mode. That'll make more sense. And I'm going to put in. You'll notice a couple things happen. My filter, my classification filter went away, and my home location chooser also went away. By default, I can bring that back by clicking there. And then let's see, I want to put in just USA. That'll get me sort of central CONUS, continental United States. And I'm going to zoom my map zoom out so I can see the whole country. And then I'm going to turn my location chooser off once that all catches up. There we go. All right, and then pop up my height adjustment slider. Okay, so now let's talk favorites panels. That's this next little grouping here. We've got the type lists panel, the watch list panel, and favorite locations list panel. So let me click on the favorite locations first. Favorite locations is by default, you've got two that are sort of preloaded. You've got CONUS, again, continental United States and Europe. And then you can add to them. So let me turn on the location chooser and let me put in KFRG. That's our favorite go-to for Mike today. Click on that. So once you have a home location loaded, then you can click on this favorite home locations plus sign in the header, and then it'll add that as a favorite. Very simple. Okay. You can notice now I also have Miami in there, and I've got the two preloads. So you can edit the entry, the label, by clicking on the little pencil icon. If you want to delete that item from your favorite locations, you click on the little X. That's going to remove it from the list. Very important note here. You've got a couple different things on the left-hand side. You've got a little target icon, and then you've got the word itself, the label itself. I want you to look at the green box. The green box, if your home location panel is open, it shows you know where your home location is and the search radius around it. If you click on the word itself, the label, that will rehome to that area. All right, so I'll do that for CONUS now. It's going to pop over the middle of the United States. Okay, let me put in Miami again, home to that. I'm going to add that as a favorite location. Now I've got Miami in here. So again, if I click on the label, KFRG, it's going to move my home. And you'll notice that what happened on the screen, everything just kind of popped, right? If you click on the target, it's simply going to move the camera. Okay, so if I click on Miami, you'll see now that everything kind of just zooms around, right? And it's actually a little bit faster. Depending on what you have loaded and what settings are, if you rehome, what SkyGlass does is actually it wipes the screen, changes the location, re-renders the map, and then re-renders all the aircraft. When you zoom, it just moves everything around. And if depending on what you have, how your settings are, it may be much faster to zoom rather than to rehome. Okay, so that's the distinction there. Zooming is the target versus rehoming, which pops the area over. Okay, now if you're going to zoom over to Europe, the map tiles are still probably going to need to render, but it won't have to repopulate and reposition all the different aircraft, so they can be a little faster experience for you. Okay, so personally, I like to use the zoom target, not the rehoming, but that's how you actually change the, if you want to change the home location, like if you're in standard mode, then you'll want to click on the label itself. Okay. So let me get back over to CONUS. All right, so that covers the functions of the favorite locations panel. Let me turn that off.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I found that because I want Sydney as my base, it's not staying there. It still defaults back to whenever I reopen it back to the US. Yeah.
If your home location is set, it should home back to it should remember your home location.
Okay.
So you may be in military mode and you just may have moved over but not changed your home. But I'll confirm that and make sure that that it's not just popping up over the United States. I could be wrong, but it should remember the home location.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. After reopen, yeah. All right. Okay, so let's play around a little bit with Australia now that we're here. So I've added Sydney, Australia as my favorite, a favorite location. We've got the East Coast here. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so we did the favorite locations panel. Actually, let me go back over to CONUS. I'm going to rehome there. And let's talk about the type list panel. So what I'm going to do is I am going to sort of go into hybrid military mode. I'm going to be in standard mode. But I'm going to turn off the other classifications. So I'm just looking at military, but just over the United States. So we have military that are turned on, master off, standard is off. I'm going to go ahead and turn on auto refresh. And so now we just got military over the United States area. Okay, you'll also notice as we switch modes from military mode into standard mode, the icon will change from a fighter to a sort of standard commercial aircraft. And the background also changes from this, in standard mode, you'll be in blue, in military mode, you'll be in red. I'm sorry, orange, sort of the standard military number. Okay, color. So let me turn off the favorite locations and turn on the type list panel. Now the type list panel basically does a, excuse me, it does a count and a listing of all the different types that are reporting in the returns that you have. And the default is it's going to rank them in by way of count, meaning the most, the type with the most number will be at the top, and then it will go down to 0 or 1 rather. If you want to change this into alphabetical mode, that's this next icon here in the header. Click on that, and it's going to shift it into alpha mode. So depending on what you're trying to do, you may want to keep it in alphanumeric, just so you can see, and easily reference, oh, I know where the K35s are because I can just go find the Ks. Or if you're looking for Q4, obviously those drones are, very few in number that are up. So it's kind of hard to see the numbering if it's not a very high number, in the count. Whereas if you want to like get a view of the refuelers or trainers or like C-17s, those are going to filter up to the top pretty easily because they're high in number.
Yeah, the refuelers. How do you do that?
So again, when you open the type list panel, it's going to default into the into count mode, and so you can see K35Rs are going to be towards the top of the count here with 16. If you go into alpha mode, then you'll just have to go alpha, via the alphabet and see, oh, there's the Ks. K35Rs. So let me switch it back to count mode. And there we go. Okay, so the type list panel, these are all buttons. And so if you click on one of the buttons, you'll isolate to that type. So let's do that with the refuelers. K35Rs, click on that entry and a couple things will happen. One, the entry will be blue to show that it's isolated now for that type. And then you've got another panel that pops up, which shows a listing of all the actual aircraft and their call signs. Okay, so here we have all the K35Rs. Half of them are reporting NA for call sign. Then we've got some other BATs, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I'm going to bring that down because it's not as important. But you can also gang up these aircraft that you have in isolate mode. Okay, so let's do the C-17s and the C-130s. And so now we've got kind of a visual representation of, the heavy lifters and the refuelers all in one go here. In the same way that you can be in isolate mode, you can put something into hide mode. All right, so to reset the all your selections, that's in the type list panel in the header. Got these two arrows in a circle. Click there, and it's going to take away all the hides or isolations and reset the list. And then let's say if you right click then, or control click if you're on a non-mouse system, right click, that will turn red and you'll see that those have been removed from view. So let's do those with the Tex 2s and the T-38s and any other lawn darts. No, that's everybody. Sometimes the BE-20s. Anyway, so now you kind of removed all the major trainer aircraft, and you'll see those big groups have gone away in Texas and Louisiana. And now you've got sort of, here's, military operational kind of things over the United States. Okay. All right. So now let me reset those again. So it'll bring everybody back. And let's do this. Let me pick the C-17s and talk about the other elements in this listing panel here. So you've got a couple more icons. Now we'll start to talk about traces. Traces are this bent line with an aircraft at the end of it. If you click on that icon, it will start to render the trails or the traces of all those aircraft. And you'll notice a couple different things. Since I turned the traces on in the type list panel, you'll notice in the main button stack, the traces icon is also activated. You'll also see this trace depth slider and panel here. Okay. And if let's make the trace depth to like 6 hours, it's going to reload all those traces. And we've got a little bit of a mistake here. Let me reload those again. There we go. Okay, so now you've got the traces for all those different aircraft but you've activated by class. All right, so let me turn those off for the C-17s. I'm gonna click on the button again. It's gonna just take that out of isolate mode. I'm gonna click on the K35Rs and click on their trace icon or trace button here, and give that a second for it to load, and you'll start to see all the traces start to load.
So cool.
What was that? Was that a question?
That was so cool. No, sorry.
No problem. So there is a bug in this version. As you can see, sometimes you'll see it from the origin, there'll be a straight line. That's just an anomaly bug that we'll be fixing in the next version. If you want to reload all the traces, you can click on the trace depth again, and it's going to clear them all, reload them, or you can change the trace depth. Yes, okay, job.
What you say drones come up as again?
The drones are Q4, Q9 are the military drones. That's the
Q4,
type.
Q9?
Yeah, Q4.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any right now over the states. Yeah, it doesn't seem any flying now. But,
Okay, thanks.
yeah. So the K35s ours are cool because you can see these marshalling patterns for the refuelers, like this guy here. You can see this little loop-de-loop that he's been doing over Arizona, and this guy over the sort of Midwest, etc. All right. So while we're looking at traces, might be a good time to talk about the sort of parallax that you get from this height adjustment slider. When you're kicked off to the side, it may be very difficult unless you really spent a lot of time in SkyGlass to go, oh, well, I know that he's over a certain area. Like this guy's over Colorado. It's very hard from this perspective to know that he's over Colorado. Okay. If you move your camera up to a top-down position, depending on where you are, you're still going to get a little bit of parallax because this is a 3D environment. So, quick little tip here. If you want to know, where they are over the states or over a specific location and get just a very, without any parallax, you can kick it up to the top and then just bring this height adjustment slider all the way down. And that's going to flatten everybody. And so now there's no parallax or distortion based on the angle of your viewing. So now you can get a, quick, easy way to know where everybody is. And again, if you kick it off to the side, they're going to be basically, stuck on the bottom of the map. So your intuitive reference of where that is in space will be there. And then if you want to see the separation again, just pop it up, and now you can really get the detail in the aircraft traces and the flight levels. Okay, you'll notice also there are, in the type list panel, there are these little button, little swatches, and that represents the color code of the type of their trace. Okay, so all the traces are type specific. So let me bring in the C-130, or let's see, C-30Js. Oops, well, it wasn't quite there yet. Let me paint there. And you'll notice that as these start to render, you'll notice they're a different color scheme, and those are based on this color reference here. If you click on the swatch itself, you've got a little color picker, and you can change the color. So you can click anywhere in this color bar, and the black circle will show what that color choice is. Then you click on start, and it's going to change the start color, and then click on, let's go to yellow, click end. And you'll see on screen, those have also been updated. So the start is the oldest position. So like where it took off from, if this is an old trace, the end ends at the butt of the aircraft. Okay, so the end trace position is the most recent trace. It's the last known position. So the trace ends at the aircraft, right? It's the most current location. Does that make sense? It's a little counterintuitive for some people. Okay, so start where it took off from, end at the last known position, at the end, ends at the end of the aircraft. Okay, and so again, the types are the different type, and the colors are just sort of picked at random when you first start up SkyGlass, but you can tune these and change them based on whatever you'd like. And also depends on kind of what your background color is for your map style, stuff like that. These bright colors can show up nicely depending on what area of the states you are for a satellite view. I kind of like to keep mine in this darker view because then the traces really show up, pop very easily. All right. So that covers the basics of the type list panel. I'm going to close the type list panel, and in closing, it's going to reset all the isolates that I had. Okay. And it will keep the traces. If you want to clear all the traces, you click on you can just turn off traces and that'll unload them all. If you want to turn the traces back on, if you click on an aircraft when these traces are on, a single aircraft, then it'll load that trace for just that aircraft. Okay. And you'll notice it's like, I can't really see that trace where it ends, right? But I see the beginning. It's because the color is dark. So let's go find that aircraft. This is a C-17 and adjust that color spectrum. So found the C-17s, click on the swatch, pick a nice bright color, click the end, and now you can see that trace color has been updated. There's something more viewable based on the map style. If you have a light map, you'll want to change these colors to something dark, like the topo or the street map. Sometimes these can be hard to see, so then you can go and change these colors to something darker. You'll notice at top to bottom, there is actually a, you can get a whiter color or a darker color, but those traces will show up more easily. The traces also will thicken up if you change the scale and become very thin if you bring the scale down. All right, makes sense? All right, so I'm bring this back to my view here and back to dark map. All right, how are we doing on time? It's about an hour and a half. Okay, good. Okay, all right, so let me turn the map styles off. And that's the basics of the type list panel. Now let's talk. Yes, sir.
Did you want to mention the select or isolate in iOS or the mobile version?
Oh, good point. Okay, so since you don't have a right click, it simply cycles. Tap once to isolate, tap again to hide, tap one more time, and it resets it. Thank you, Brent. Okay, so now let's talk watch list. The watch list is this last icon, the icon in the center, the banner. Again, the banner is your indicator for anything watch list related. Let me pull up the type list again. You'll notice when we had a type selected there, and it brings up the aircraft list, there's also some icons, the banner icons here. You can add them from the type list panel by clicking on their banner icon here. So let's do that now. Let's do copper. And you'll notice that the icon for the aircraft, the background and the border changed. Okay, went to this sort of more highlighted view. Let me turn the type list panel off. And you can also right click on an aircraft or control click if you've got a non-mouse setup. Right click will also automatically pop it onto the watch list. Okay. So let me go ahead and open up my watch list now. And I'm going to clear it just because this is kind of how you'll start with a zero watch list. Okay. So again, right click to add an aircraft to the watch list. You can also do it anywhere you see a banner icon. So I pick, I've got another K-35R in my HUD. I'm going to click that banner icon and boom, we've added it to the watch list. Okay. So let me just pop through and just add a couple more random ones on here, just so I've got some to work with here and give you some basics. So you'll notice that in the watch list, everything gets first put into a unassigned group. Okay, watch lists, you can put them into different groups. And you can also edit I'm sorry, what am I trying to say? Their label. Okay, so let's find that bat, and let's change his label and put him into its own group. So I'm going to click on the, let me turn off auto refresh so we don't get other things happening. All right, so I'm going to click on the edit button, which is this pencil over a piece of paper in the watch list entry itself for this bat 81. Okay, and the default, depending on how you've added it to the watch list, the label may be the hex code. All right, so let's just say this is a Fueler 1. Okay, and now we can assign it to a group. This will be a group of the current groups that have been defined. And since we haven't defined any groups, it's just going to be a very short list. So let me click on the plus sign, and then that's going to change this interface and say Fuelers, and click on save. And now you'll see we've got a new group here with that aircraft has been moved into that group, and then everybody else is still in the unassigned group. All right, so I'm going to close this window by either clicking on the save button or the close button. And you can also now, since you've got a group defined, you can click on another aircraft, click its profile, and drag it into that group or drag it out of that group. So I'm just going to do that. Okay. And now this doesn't obviously make any sense with this text 2 and the fuelers, but you get the point. So let me talk about a couple other pieces here. You can see in the aircraft entry itself, there's a few different fields. First one is its label. Next one is its last call sign. If it's flying now, its current call sign, and then the aircraft type. To remove it from the watch list, you can click on this banner minus sign button, and that's a two-step process. There's a little bit of a like an oh no check. So if you click it once, it's going to move it into a deleted group, and then if you click it again, then it'll actually kick it off the list, and now it's gone forever unless you go find it again. Okay, so let me just go put some more stuff on here. Put it back on the list. Okay, so again, deleting is a two-step. First thing it's going to do is move it into a deleted group, and then to actually delete it, you can click on it again, or you can simply move it back into the list. Okay. The aircraft, I'm sorry, the magnifying glass, that kicks off secondary searches. You probably don't want to do that. I got into that in the deep dive. This next one is to edit, like we talked about. This next one is to show the trace of that aircraft. You can click on it here and show the trace from the watch list panel. And then to get some deeper information, you have to have the database loaded. So you click on the information icon, and it's going to say, oh, first you're going to load your database. So let's go ahead and do that. I usually don't get into this one, but it seems like we will now. So this takes a few seconds to load depending on the speed of your machine. This is the crowdsourced database from ADSB Exchange that they maintain daily. All right, so once that's loaded, click on the eye, will give you this quick indicator, little readout of the different fields that are in the database. One thing I didn't mention before, you'll notice that depending on what I'm hovering over, sometimes you get this little clipboard icon that turns green. If I'm up in the HUD, you'll see the little border will show in green. Anytime that happens in SkyGlass, if you click on that element while it's highlighted in this way, it's going to take that information and put it on the clipboard. So this is a nice, easy way if you want to grab the hex code. Just hover, click. Now it's on your clipboard. You can move into a different application and paste from from SkyGlass. Okay, all right. So a little bit more about the watch list, and then I'm going to wrap up. The header itself has a little count, how many aircraft are flying or active versus how many are in the list total. So, and right now in the watch list header, we've got only 8 aircraft chosen right now. So, and they're all current. As they, cycle out that are not active, then this count will obviously be more meaningful. Most of you probably grabbed the list from Monkey, so I'll talk about that real fast. MonkeyWorks puts out his watch list, and that's available right now. That's available on his website. You go to his store, you buy it. It's a free download, so you don't pay for anything for it. And then you get a link to download it. Once that is downloaded, you can import that watch list from the watch list header. So open up your watch list, click on this little down, the folder with the down chevrons on it, and then you can, it'll first give you a little warning. Hey, do you want to replace your current list or add to it? You can replace, and then you'll go and navigate to where you downloaded, and now you can pull in any watch list. In the same way, if you have a watch list that you want to share with someone, you can build up your watch list and then export it. And then you can be like Monkey and share your watch list. Once your watch list is on a machine, you can get it to your mobile device in this way. All right, so now we've got this big watch list loaded. And there's a couple of icons, cloud icons here. Once you have it on a device, you can push it up to the little SkyGlass cloud, and you can have your watch list attached to your username, and then open up your mobile device and open up your watch list and click on the cloud down, and it'll bring that watch list down onto your device. Any updates that you make as far as labels and things like that, you'll need to repeat that process because it isn't automatically shared or maintained. Okay, it's sort of a one button push and then pull. Okay. All right, so now we've got a bigger list. I can show some of the other details here. In the same way that the type list panel, you can isolate and hide. Same functionality here. Left click to isolate. Let me make that smaller. Right click to hide and click again to reset it. So you can see we've got a few classifications that are hidden here by default for Monkey, for Monkey's list. You'll also notice there are little chevrons on the right-hand side. You can collapse or expand the different groups. And then right now we have it in show everything mode. If you only want to see the aircraft that are flying listed, you can click on this, the aircraft icon in the watch list header, and that will filter and only show aircraft that are flying as listed. All right, the groups will still show, but you'll also notice if the group doesn't have any active aircraft, it'll be this muted orange, and if it does have an active aircraft, then it will be the brighter orange. And then again, if you wanted to reset, it's the same icon, reset the hide isolate. That's in the header here. And there you go. So now we've got all those isolates off. You can also expand and contract all groups by clicking on the toggle here. We just collapse them and we can expand them all as well. All right. If you click on any entry in your watch list as the aircraft itself, it will move the camera to that location. Cool. All right. So let me collapse those. And let's see here. Looks like we only have military up right now. I don't see any of the other aircraft types. Oh, that's because I had the type classification off. So let me turn those back on in the filter declutter and reset. In the watch list header, this first big gear icon is sort of a reload button. There we go. Okay, so that's an important note. I'm glad I did that. If you have turned off a different classification, that will affect your watch list and will affect what's loaded and what's showing. So I turn those back on, and now you can see from Monkey's watch list, we've got some other aircraft besides military, a few masked, etc. Some of these are like City of Phoenix. That's going to be a, a Leo bird. law enforcement. Probably could be a law enforcement, could be just a, contract by the city. Some of these are the aircraft that do flight surveying, take pictures of air, the terrain, etc. Now that I have the database loaded up, you'll see we've got this extra owner-operator field in the pop-up panels. If I turn that on in my HUD, then we'll also see that listed there. Okay. All right, so will it list all types that are in the air? Yeah, if you've got the classification on, you can also gang these up, meaning you can turn on the type list panel and do a C-17 isolate. And now you're showing on screen only the C-17s, right? But our load is only from the watch list, not from mill mode. So if you have your watch list, open, it will only show, and you've burned everything or reset, it'll only show those aircraft flying. You can also turn military mode on. And the watch list is also on. So now you're getting kind of a mix of all the different aircraft. We've got all the military plus the watch list aircraft, and the type list will reflect everything that's loaded. Does that make sense? All right. Okay, so we did traces, we did iOS, feed for Cam. Is Cam still with us? Who's gonna have to, they'll have to check the replay. Okay, so if you are a feeder, I'll cover this real briefly. Turn that off, turn the watch list off. If you go into the preference panel, it's very simple. If you feed to ADSB Exchange, all you need to do is click this feed from local network address, and the default should work if you've set it up correctly and it's on a sort of a standard network. So I'm going to click burn. And you'll notice a couple things here. First, the aircraft background changed to this magenta. That means you're in private feeder mode. And I'm going to load traffic and we'll see data from my feeder if all goes well. There we go. Good. Yeah, so this is my antenna on my roof is getting these aircraft right now. The only limitation is you probably may have limited aircraft detail. If you don't have the database open, it won't have the type aircraft. That's a back-end lookup. But since I do have it open, we get a lot of information here. Boy, that's a big owner-operator. Peloton Holdings LLC, Bag Aviation LLC, Metro Larry, all the people. Whew, that's a mouthful. All right, longest one I've ever seen. All right, good. So to switch you back into your standard source, turn on the preferences, click on ADSB Exchange Internet Feed. That's what you want to keep it on if you want the air traffic that are not on just your feeder. And then click close. You can also, so from the local address means you're on the same local subnet of your feeder. If you want to monitor it from afar, you need the Anywhere ID or user ID is now, but it's been renamed if you've updated your feeder. Then you just pop that in this, and then you can see it regardless of your location, as long as it's up. So you can kind of monitor your feed from afar. All right, now I'll burn again and load. We'll go switch back into military mode. All right. Okay, I think we've covered everything. Is there a way to look at past history, or is it only live? Absolutely. So this is I will refer you to the deep dive. There's two ways to do that. Well, it'll be the same deep dive, time travel mode and flight history reporting. Okay, that's where you want to go. There's a lot of different ways to do that. If you drop into time travel mode, I'll just cover it super brief here. That's an advanced topic. Click on this little icon here, the advanced options. This first one is time travel mode. The second one is flight history reporting. This next one is to change your feeds without being in the preferences, and then you can change your color options. Click on time travel mode and it'll tell you, oh, we're going to need to switch modes here. And now basically you're in standard mode. So you need a home location and a search radius, and then you pick a time. And you can go back. Let me check my dates here. SkyGlass, the data is good from March of 2020 forward. And it's every 5 seconds. So basically you dial in a location, dial in a time in UTC. This panel, pick your panel is in UTC. It does give you a home location adjustment, but you should dial in your location, and then you can either play back or forward in speed or load a snapshot. But just remember, when you're in time travel mode, you're in standard mode. There's no such thing as military only mode in time travel mode. So this is kind of your Wayback Machine. And you can go, like I said, back a couple, three plus years. All right. And then to get out of time travel mode, click on the close button or the icon, and now you're back in live mode. The other way to do reporting in that sort of historical view is to run a flight history report. And you can do that per aircraft or per watch list group. And that is anywhere that you see the hourglass is you can run it by an aircraft by clicking in the HUD hourglass or by a group hourglass. And that will pop up ask you to burn again, and then pop up this new picker panel, which preloads all the hex codes in the input box. And then you basically dial in how many number of days based on this starting time looking back, right? So if you want to do 30 days from now, it's set up for you. If you want to change the number of days, or, if you want to go back and go, oh, January of 2021, you dial it in here, and then 10 days back from that starting point, looking backwards. Did that answer your question? Oh, thank you, Red. You dropped the link in the chat. Go ahead, okay?
Yes. How do I get that monkey list?
Yeah, so you just go out to his website, monkeyworksus.com, I think it is.
Okay.
And then go into the store and just search SkyGlass, and you'll see it.
Okay, thanks.
You just add it to your cart, and purchase it for free. And so I will tell you, in the next version of SkyGlass, which I'm working on, I'm going to give you guys a preview. You want a preview?
Okay.
All right.
Preview.
Woohoo. All right, so let me SkyGlass. I tell you, I've been working on this thing 4 months, not 4 months, but for many months. And holy smokes, it is a bear. Anyway, what I was going to get to was in the next version of SkyGlass, you'll be able to share your watch list publicly within the SkyGlass ecosystem. And so you'll be able to see who's got their watch list published. Will be a little up and down vote kind of thing. Probably just an up vote. Like I like that SkyGlass, but anyway, so it'll be much faster and easier. Monkey will just be able to share his watch list with one button here, and then you can just go see the list, see his, download it directly. So anyway, so yeah, we've got a 3D globe now. Let me pop into military mode, and we'll load some traffic. So that's the first big thing, is we've got 2 different map modes. The other fun thing that I'm working on, I'm testing right now. So let me turn on my special stuff here. So, okay, do you mind? Somebody's got me muted. No, okay, there we go. Okay, I was getting some feedback. Okay, so there are some different levels of weather. So I'm still getting the feedback. Somebody have me unmuted? No, that's weird. Okay. Maybe it's me. I bet it is. But I don't have that on. Doesn't matter. Okay, so we've got some radar options now for weather. So this is one level of weather, which I think is pretty cool. And then there's some different, types of weather. This is the satellite and radar composite, or you can just look at the radar mosaic.
That's cool.
Super fun. And now this is my favorite part. I haven't done this yet for the round map, but I do have it on the flat map. All right, so let me zoom out, get the flat map. Oops, where we are. There we go. Flat map is loaded. So y'all are familiar with TFRs, I'm sure, temporary flight restrictions. Now we have 3D TFRs. And if you're a pilot, Mike, you'll know this. I'm also dialed in, and I think this is the first time. In fact, you guys are seeing this. This is the first time ever showing this wide. I've shared a few screen grabs to some of my beta testers, but that's it. SIGMETs and AirMets. So these are a special type of NOTAM. SIGMETs are significant weather notifications for pilots that will affect all aircraft types. AirMets are will affect some aircraft types. So now we have, and I think this is the first time anyone has ever done this, 3D AirMets, SIGMETs in 3D space. Check that out. How fun is that?
Very cool. Very cool.
So now you can hover and say, oh, like that's a TFR, special security TFR. Like what's this guy? This is a SIGMET for convection. Here's a SIGMET for also convection. I think this is AirMet for convection. Let's see here. SIGMETs. It's like, so this one, typical over the coastal areas, you'll get some visibility AirMets for IFR, etc. But I think this is so fun, and I've never seen this anywhere. And again, these will squish and stretch with your with the height adjustment slider. But yeah, super fun to see this like massive TFR for the space launch over Nevada. That's crazy. It's like 0 to 100,000 feet. So it's like goes up into infinity. So we got some cool weather stuff happening. Still a lot more work to do. This will be a premium, sorry, but will be a premium level stuff. This weather API is so not cheap. But I'm really hoping that I'm going to have enough users that are going to be interested in this that'll pay for the premium so that I can actually keep this going. It's a bit of a gamble for me. So let me ask you guys this. What do you think, worth it for a premium level to do cool weather stuff like this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How
Oh,
premium? How premium?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And there is also this other piece that I have, you'll notice I've got a little volcanic ash. These will come up as the NOTAMs, but I also have like what volcanoes were erupting or have current events happening. And then you've got the ash alerts. And then there's also this sort of storm tracker. It's not quite tuned yet. And I'll just let this start to render as we go here. You can see them start to paint in. There's just so many of them. I've got to figure out a way to meaningfully declutter because it gets too busy. But you can see them all sort of painting in these sort of vertical sort of storm cell, what their height is, and then a vector and a direction speed. But you can see they're all in these special AirMet areas, SIGMET areas as well. But and then you get some detail. Anyway, I will leave it there. You get the first preview of these special new weather features that are coming. I'm glad. Thanks for the feedback. It's been months and months of me working at this and changing over to this globe map system. It's super cool, but man, it's like rebuilding SkyGlass from the ground up almost, because it starts with the map. You know, a lot of it, some of it I've been able to port, but anyway, it's been a lot of fun, a lot of learning, a lot of late nights, a lot of long days. Anyway. Good stuff.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other last questions before I leave you? Feel free to leave any comments in the chat, any feedback for your experience today. I get to read these afterwards. And so if you want to just give me some feedback on how it went. And let me also just sort of plug some merch and some other ways to give to SkyGlass. As I did mention, when I roll out the next version, this will be version 2.0, SkyRider Bravo. There will be a premium level that will have some extra features and some cool stuff. I will be putting out an update for the iOS version, cleaning up that interface, making that a lot more useful. There's also, let me turn off the sharing here. There we go. Also got some cool merch, and we're wearing one of the t-shirts. We've got a couple of glass out there. Thank you, Ren. I think Thomas is one of those mugs as well. All this kind of stuff really helps, support what I got going on. There's also a Patreon community if you want to join Patreon and just give me a little bit extra every month or every year, whatever your commitment is. If you do think, what I do is worthwhile, you can support me there. I am an army of one. I do all of it myself. I conceived of it and programmed it in one website and all the servers and all that kind of craziness. I will put a big shout out to ADSB Exchange. They have built an amazing network of like 9,000 feeders across the planet, and they feed all this, and that's crowdsourced effort. And I just love those guys. So anyway, feel free to reach out anytime if you need any help to the need help button on my website, or you can use the support form. And I really appreciate everybody being here today. Any final questions or thoughts before I let you go? Really appreciate everybody being here today. Thank you so much.
No, learned a lot. Thank you.
You bet. Glad you're here. Good stuff. Hey, Mike, I will ask you this. Will you mind pinging me on my website? I'd love to have an offline conversation with you about what you got going on, and if you can use SkyGlass in any specific way. I'd love your feedback.
Oh, yeah. It's fantastic. So yeah, absolutely. We can do an offline.
Good. And I tell you, anytime, I'll leave you with this. Anytime any of you ever find yourself saying to yourself, I wish SkyGlass would do X or Y or Z, please reach out and let me know. There has been so much that I have built out just because somebody suggested something, gave me a great idea. Just watching Monkey do his thing, I've added a lot of fun, cool features. So you guys really do drive the development and the direction. And I really take your feedback seriously, and it really does make an impact. So please feel free to reach out with suggestions, comments, feedback anytime. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
All right.
SkyGlass out. Stay frosty. Cheers, everybody.